You know how deep you got to be in the SCP Foundation to see a puff of smoky like this in here and run this twice, big G. I mean, most of the time running 6.6 is pretty frosty at 10 to the negative 11th about what moles are inside the pipe just throwing shit in the simulator. And M being here, big gravity or little gravity, well, you can't have one without two. And, well, what was the thing between one and two here? It was this thing, now it's a puff of smoke. Earth, right? You know, they're 9.8 throwing a ball up there, negative, and one. So you get some spaces the first time, the second time, and those are the values starting to add into there. Big overall universe, all the stuff in it, the Bohr's radius, what we believe stars, anything else, but that's not precise. I give 0 fucks about 5 to 6 o'clock, clocking out 10 to the negative 80 days back, or 8 days back. And that's, again, some of that puff of smoke about in here to the Boltzmann constant and the Bohr's radius stuff about zeros, and deltas, and big G's and little G's about Earth is a little G comparatively to the overall black hole or any other black holes in the universe that serve that radial 8 hours a day, 3.14, and whether it's a joke or whether that's real, that serves to say the ideal gas law deals with those types of moles. And there R is some sunshine and a vacuum plasma state doing some weird stuff around Earth and the quantification between all that at times. And for the most part, that's R, moving right. Sunshine black holes are third population or first population star. The little r's later, or why this, usually the M1 service rating is still such a big R with a little y about it on some Planck's height of this gravity on the shortest distance, right? Some H in the equation is the pyramid's height. That's what that does. You see these things in other equations. But in general, I want to throw you into the black hole here. Well, not this one. Which one was it? Oh, did I cover it up? No, I had a good one. Is it on here? Big old black hole. Dropped it. The world, our universes, doesn't mean it's independently the big one. But you would use that matter in terms of here to whatever K system you have that says it's kinetic forces or it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, 11th position. So from away from the orders is, the 9. Where's 9? 9 here giving us 2 back on what it is. We usually say 7, but you would, but operators at 2. Faraday could be the electricity's wobbliness at C, 9 volts. Or any other mole that would serve on a sinusoidal doing some 3-phase stuff or AC/DC stuff. When you're looking at it from a time frequency domain, any number that is doing that serves the ohms or the resistance to that value about what that biggest black hole is. And so you get in here and you're saying, well, okay, we can do a couple of things with a few of these experiments that say, okay, so there's an order inside of Penzero stuff you're going to need, but realistically, for the most part, whether it's a rocket pack or you're talking about Mars or a fall to Venus or escape velocities that have that right-hand rule, you want to make sure that you apply all of those forces in such a way that now you can say, well, a puff of smoke is heating right, and those are the kind of 2 points on that 9.6 whatever, 10 to the 11th that help you remember, what is it? Oh, shit. I was going to, Cain and Abel, I can't remember the number. You just make your own SCP about it. It's 27 or 73 and 76, whatever it is. And that's kind of one of those things. Hopefully it follows the story narrative. Kyle Rayner storyboarding it out the same way. Penzero, 45-minute Penzero, catching the field charge kids for the special class that it is. Whether it be astrophysics, chemistry, produces a heat, an exothermic system, and some bubbling action. It may not necessarily be a photon, but isn't photon heat on the black body problem of heating a steel beam to white hot? Well, that Bohr radius is again R to some things you need for the coulombs and Gaussian about the copper wire, the uniform doping of whatever you pulled out pig iron in the ground, and the standard template construct for the chainsword. That would pose some kind of impact or some kind of spring force in that way to say it passed through a telephone pole, whether the winter cycle did it, weakly attracting gravity, or some immediate pump case action was the force. And now we can tell by other forms how that turns into a value, useful and interesting for the most part, 2/3. But if you had to rely on the 1/3, 33 1/3 in itself to say the rest of it's broken down into smaller pie charts, it might be potentially optics in a Smith chart to argue its spin comes from some of these straight lines or linear equations, linear algebra, not being A, but instead being X, ZYX. Here, the orientation to the kids adding class, right? First week, we're doing just what we think that they're going to get, and that's the integral. Basically what could be ontologically represented as epsilon or omega, right? KT minus omega t, E would be an energy. It's a spike at height. And inside of there, this is what we think is all inside of the universe, right? All the matter, stick figures, add things I could add together in such a way that equal the points that's rough SI units. This is going to not only be in that form, but in be other potentials as long as it could be in that form. But what we know under, satellite or camera footage is what had happened. Now, time in the satellite or the cell phone footage is a little different. Space travel or time travel can be practical, apparently. Hawking, who knew? But it did. It served to what nobody could know about the massive amount of data at that level to say you could use that to totally decipher all the Brownian motion to what went all the way back, and therefore what's practical about chemistry moles and physics moles and dynos and stuff like that. But yeah, it's there. You get used to seeing it a few times. Spinners and some splines or the useful fields where the decay would cause that no matter what you did, and you can say that that's what that's going, or maybe even just the effect, the emissary effect. I need it to bounce out there, get a view for a minute, and that's the same thing to say that now there's a new shell out there. There's new ways where that confirmed a bit of information or did something for Neil deGrasse Tyson apparently. But basically sent Salty out there, it came back. Cool. Gravity keeps pulling back, dead, super dead out there, right? I mean, can a guy out here. If game becomes Schwarzschild radius, I'm not going to say you're going to say powder load to actually get it to escape velocity and therefore the Schwarzschild radius of that amount of black powder, but it could be done. Again, practical physical things that really say other ways to do that would be easier, smoother, ohms, currents and resistance, data process, and temperature. To an end, I mean, that becomes its own wave function that, comes its own subset that changes under its own observation, a 3 mean, because helium. When, the carbon number helps you pull out what other materials, planktonic, carbonatic acid, or whatever it is, to help you atomic layer deposition or peel, acid etch something or relieve it. And maybe, that helps you with some charge conduction, but for the most part, based the height on the copper wire, or usually over drilling some sky hook for the military. It's it's too heavy, but if you start drilling out even the stress points under any dyno you put it to, and that provides its own weak spot to what in the field may be, their cable whip across the deck on the ghost ship. There would be that potential, and something thrown from at the black hole. I was supposed to get that clip of coming in, this ferocious beast standing in the middle of it, and being able to provide some notations to that, become some orbitals around the black hole. It's lensed, it's dark, I can't really be sure of all the black body problems, but looking through the torsion of the barrel, you could argue that that's a way to get to a useful point where you could say the black hole's mass makes sense there. A promutal black hole banging around in the black hole to some of the other monsters out there roughly in their index before it hits the light limit, Schwarzschild's radius and horizon limit, right? Gravity's still a star underneath that thing, or a hydrogen thing that still plasmically put neutrons so hot that you can't touch the middle of it. I'm not going to say that doesn't necessarily bend light at a level of physics, but also some of the rules therein. Hot plasmic made all that carbon, helium early star. We do the math, it works, at least to a certain degree. What's up and down.